Hello everyone. Our lesson is about receptors and senses. Example, the eye as a sense organ. In the previous lessons, as you know, we talked about nervous system and how nervous system is responsible for all the activities in our body. It's responsible for responses to the environment. Okay, today we will see how this nervous system will work, or how the parts of nervous system will work. So first we will start with the objectives. The objectives of our lesson are, firstly, to understand that receptors are the first stage in reflex arcs. 2. To know the different types of stimulus to which a mammal is sensitive. 3. To know that sense organ combines receptors with other cells. And the last objective, to know the structure and the function of the eye. So, by the end of this lesson, all of you should be able to understand or to do these things, okay? To understand the receptors, types of stimulus, sense organs, how it combines receptors with other cells, and also you should be able to understand the or to illustrate the structure and function of the eye. Receptors detect changes in the environment. What's that mean? Any change in the environment that we live in it, okay, we will feel, we should be able to feel this change. But how we will be able to feel the change in the environment? Firstly, we have a stimulus. A stimulus, what do you mean by a stimulus? It's a change in the environment that affects an organism. So for example, let's say the temperature, the environment temperature. So when the environment temperature will change, okay, it will affect on our body. Another example, light. If the light of the in the environment it changed, also it will affect on our body. So the temperature, the light, okay, these are examples of what? Or examples of a stimulus. So again, stimulus is a change in the environment that affects an organism. Now, when a change in the environment will happen, okay, how our bodies will detect or how our bodies will know there is a change. All living organisms are sensitive. Okay, so we are sensitive. What's that mean? We can respond to a stimuli. So sensitive, it means the ability to respond to a stimulus. Animals, including mammals, okay, we have nervous system which receive information from the environment, decide how to respond, and then tells the body. When we talked about reflection, or when we talked about how our bodies it reflect to the to environment or to a change in the environment, we say we have what? We have receptors, for example, skin. If you touch something hot or if you touch something it's sharp, for example, the receptors in your skin, it will detect this change. It will send a signal to your brain, to central nervous system. Then your central nervous system will detect, will process this signal and then will respond to it. So, responding to the environment, it starts with what? with a receptor. So what do you mean by a receptor? It's a part of the nervous system that is adapted to receive a stimuli. Again, this responding to the environment, it starts with what? It starts with a receptor. What do you mean by receptor? It's a part of the nervous system that tells the body that it's adapted to receive a stimuli. Then, how many types of receptors do we have in our body? We have different types of receptors in our bodies depending on the kind of stimuli, depending on to which stimuli they respond. Here, this table, it shows the examples of receptors that we have in our bodies. First one, photo. Photoreceptor. As you know, as we explained before when we were talking about photosynthesis, we say the word photo, it means what? Light. So, light receptor. So, it responds to which stimulus? Of course, from the name, it will respond to a light. Example of this photoreceptor, or in which part in our body do we have this kind of receptor? Red cells in retina of eye. Then another example of a receptor, chemoreceptor. Chemo, it means what? Chemicals. So it will respond to a chemical stimulus. Example, taste buds. Taste buds, what do you mean by it? Our tongue, it's covered with what? With taste buds. So how we can detect the taste of food? By taste buds. So taste buds are what? Are examples of chemoreceptors. Then thermo receptor. Thermo, the word thermo, it comes from thermal. So thermal, it means like heat. So thermoreceptors, it will respond to change in temperature. Thermoreceptors, where do we have thermoreceptors? In our skin. Then mechanoreceptors. Mechano, it means it comes from the word mechanical. Okay, so mechanical change such as change in length. Okay, example, hair cells in ear, hearing and balancing. Then receptors are transducers. Receptors are transducers. What's that mean? The word trans, it comes from the word transformation. Okay, transferring. What's that mean? It means it change the kind of stimulus. For example, all receptors are transducers, which means they convert one form of energy into another. Okay, transducer, it means it has the ability to convert one form of energy into another form of energy. How? They convert the energy of the stimulus, for example, light energy. Our eyes will detect the light energy. Okay, but this light energy, it should be sent to our central nervous system to process it and to take an action. But how it will be sent to our brain? Will it be sent as light energy? No, because it will send through the nervous or through the nerves. So what's that mean? It means the light energy, it will be converted into electrical impulses, because as we know, our nervous system, it works, the principle of it, it's what? It's sending electrical impulses. So now what happened? The receptor in our eye, it detects what? Light energy. Then it convert this light energy into electrical impulse. So this is what do you mean by receptors are transducers. Okay, here we have this diagram. It shows how receptors are transducers. Okay, stimulus, for example, a change in the environment. Stimulus, definition for it, change in the environment. Receptor, also definition of receive stimuli and converts them into electrical impulses. Sensory neurons, it carry the information, the electrical impulses into the central nervous system. Okay, so stimulus, receptor, change, convert the kind of stimuli into electrical impulse. Will be then the electrical impulse will be sent through sensory neuron to the central nervous system, and then central nervous system will send a signal back. The senses. Our senses are our ability to be aware of different aspects of the environment. What's that mean? As we know, in our body, we have senses. We have the five senses. Okay, these five senses, they are controlled. What does that mean? It means it cannot work just by itself. It needs something to control it. But in addition to that, these senses, to function, it needs what? It needs food supply. It needs energy supply. So this energy supply, it will comes what? It comes through the blood. What's that mean? These organs or these sense organs, it needs a supply of oxygen. Okay, they need a supply of blood to deliver nutrients and oxygen, and also to remove the wastes. These receptors, we have two types of receptors. We call them internal receptors and external receptors. Most of the sense organs, they are what? They are external. It means they found outside the head. Because we know, when I am saying head, I mean the central nervous system or the nervous system, because it found in the brain, in the head. Okay, so let's take an example. Eye, okay, it's a receptor, but where is this receptor? It's outside the body to detect the environment. But in addition to that, we have some internal receptors. Okay, here, there are also many internal receptors inside the body. The function of these internal receptors, they are what? These detect blood temperature, pH, for example, and are vital in the process of homeostasis. Again, senses, our body senses, it's what? Our ability to be aware of different aspects of environment. We detect, we feel the environment by what? By our senses. These senses, they have receptors. They work how? They have receptors. These receptors, it's either internal or external. External, it means it's outside the head. It detects the change in the environment, or it responds to a change in the environment. In addition to that, also we have some internal receptors they found inside the body. Example of internal receptors, it's what? It's the receptors that detect the blood temperature and pH. Here, what do we have? Here we have a diagram that it shows the types of receptors, the kind of senses in our body, and how it works. For example, taste. It depends on chemical stimulation of the tongue, as we explained in this table. Okay, we said the types of receptors that we have and how it works and what's the function of each one of it. Okay, smell, also it depends on what? chemical stimulation, where we can find it in nose and the rest of the receptors. Then we will take the eye as an example of sense organ. So here, as we mentioned in the objectives of the lessons, we said you should be able to explain, or you should be able to illustrate the structure of eye and also the function of eye. The eye as a sense organ. Okay, we will explain the structure of eye here. The eye is an example of a sense organ. It contains what? Receptor. Okay. Example, the receptor, the rod and cone cells on the retina. Then systems for making the most of the light stimulus, including the lens and the iris, its own blood supply and physical protection. Now, eye, or this sense organ, it consists of what? It consists of a receptor, then system for making the most of the light stimulus, and also we said all the sense organ, they need what? They need a food supply that it comes through the blood. So the diagram below shows the arrangement of the structures in the eye. So this structure of eye, here we will explain all the parts of eye and how it works when it detects any change in the environment. So here we have the eye structure. As we mentioned here, the eye as a sense organ, it has receptors, systems of making most of the light stimulus, and also blood supply and physical protection. We will see each one, what are the parts of it. Firstly, we will start from here. Here it's the front of eye. The front of eye, the light, it start when there will be a light, it will start entering the eye from this part. So firstly, the first part, it's what? Cornea. Cornea, it's a transparent layer responsible for the most of refraction. Okay, when the light it enters the eye, okay, this light will refract or it will bend. So this cornea, it's the first part that it's responsible for refraction of light. Then after cornea, what do we have? We have pupil and iris. Pupil, it's what? It's this, like it's an opening. Okay, it's an opening that it will change depending on the light intensity. Sometimes in the light, when the light intensity is high, so the size of pupil will be smaller. But when the light intensity is low, or for example when it's dark, the size of the pupil, it will increase. So the pupil and iris, both of them, okay, the function, they control what? Light intensity on the retina. They will control the amount of light that it will enter the eye until it will reach the retina. Then after this part, we will go to the second part. Ciliary, muscle, suspensory ligament, and lens. So 1, 2, 3. 3 parts. Okay, 3 parts. These 3 parts, they do what? They control light focusing on the retina. Now, these 2, it will control the light intensity on the retina. These 3, it will control light focusing on the retina. Okay, then now the light, it enters through cornea, then through pupil, iris, then by the help of these three parts will be focused on the retina. So now, what do we have on retina? Retina contains a light sensitive cells, okay, which are rods and cones. Then after that, now light it enters, it reaches the retina. Here we have light sense cells, or they are like receptors. Then after that, what will happen? These receptors will detect the stimulus, and it will now it should send it to the brain. Now, how the eye it's connected to the brain? It's connected through this nerve. We call it optic nerve. Optic nerve, it composed of sensory neurons which carry nerve impulses to the visual center at the rear of the brain. Again, the light it starts from here. Pupil iris, it controls the intensity that it goes to the retina. Then after that, these three parts it will control, and it will control focusing the light on the retina. Retina, it has sensitive cells. These sensitive cells will detect the stimulus, then will send it to the brain through what? Through optic nerves. And also we have another parts which are yellow spot. This area has the highest density of cones and thus offers maximum sharpness, but only works at full efficiency in bright light. This it's everything about eye structure. Now what you need to memorize, it's as I just mentioned, you will start step by step. Cornea, pupil iris, ciliary suspensory lens, then retina. After retina you will have optic nerve, and in addition to that you should also memorize the yellow spot. The function of yellow spot is what? It works fully efficiency in bright light. So when there will be a bright light, so what will happen? This yellow spot, it will start working. Rods and cones are photoreceptors on the retina. Now, two types of receptors, of photoreceptors in the retina. Okay, but why do we have two types of receptors? What is the function of each one? Again, here it's a structure of eye, okay, opening of tear duct, iris, as we say, the color of eye, pupil, it's the black or it's the opening, and sclera, it's the white. Now, the retina, we say retina, it has the senses or the sensitive cells or the receptors. Okay, these two receptors, the rods and cones. Okay, what is the function of each one, or how they differ from each other? If we will take a look, here is the structure of eye, and here we said it's the retina. But as you can see, retina, it consists of rod cells and cone cells. Now, the difference between them. Rod cells are packed most tightly around the edge of the retina. Objects are seen most clearly at night. Focus on this word, at night. Cone cells are packed most tightly at the center of the retina. Objects are seen most clearly during daylight. Again, rod cells, where we can find them around the edge of retina, while cone cells, we can find them in the center of the retina. Rod cells, objects are seen most clearly at night. Here the objects will be seen more clearly during day. Here, another explanation for rod, or another difference between rod and cone. Rods, we said, we use it for what? To see objects when it's dark or at night. So rods provide a black and white images. Several rods may be wired to a single sensory neuron in the optic nerve. So 1, 2, 3. These three, they are what? They are rods, rod cells. As you can see, three of them, they are connected or wired to the to a single sensory neuron. Okay, 1, 2, 3. They are connected into what? Into one sensory neuron. But if you will look at the cones, each one it's connected to a sensory neuron. So the rods, it gives us what? Black and white image during night. But cones, it provide detailed images in color. There are three types: sensitive to red, green, and blue. Cones are only work under high light intensity. Now, the difference between them again, which one will be more active at night or during when it's dark? The rod cells. How is the image that we will get it from rod cells? Black and white. Okay. The senses. Okay. The cells. The sense cells. All of them, they are connected to what? To one sensory neuron. This is for rod cells. But in cone, we can find it in the center of the retina. It works efficiently during day or when there is a high light intensity. The sense cells of it, each one it's connected to a single uh, uh, separated sensory neuron. It means each one, it has its own sensory neuron. It gives us a detailed image, and it works under high light intensity. How a sharp image is formed on the retina. Again, retina, we said it's the part of the eye that it has the sense cells. Okay, so now what will happen, or how do we see objects? An image is formed when rays of light from an object are brought together, focused onto the retina. This is eye. Here, this part, it's what? It's the retina. Now, a light, it enters the eye, and then by this lens, it will brought the light, or it will focus the light here. Okay, a sharp image is formed when a light from a single point on the object reaches a single point of the retina. But what will happen? The image that will be formed in the retina, how it is? It is inverted. What do you mean by inverted here? It means it will be upside down. So, and diminished. What's that mean? It's smaller than object. So the image that it will form on the retina, how it is? It is inverted, it's upside down, and also it's smaller than its real size. So now, what will happen? The brain corrects this inversion and reduction in size. This process is called integration. If you remember, for 2 or 3 lessons, we talked about the word integration. We said integration, it's what? It's when making many parts work together to do a function in the proper way. So this is how image it will form, and how the brain will correct it. Accommodation, adjusting for near and distant objects. As you know, let's imagine to better understand how the eye it works. Imagine you have a camera, and you are trying to take a picture uh, for any object. So what will happen? It depends. The picture of the object, it depends on the distance from the camera lens and the object. Okay, so as you know, what you need to do, you need to adjust the lens. Okay, you should to make a change to the lens, so until you will get a clear image. Here it's the same thing, it happened to our eyes. As you can see here, we have ciliary muscles. Muscle, the function of muscle is to relax and contract. When it will relax and contract, it will affect on what? It will affect on the lens. Now, look at here, we have two eyes, but with different, for different objects. For example, if the object is far from the eye or it's close to the eye. So as you can see here, this lens, it differ from this one. The shape of it, now it differ. What makes this shape it differ? It's what? It's the ciliary muscle. Now we will see what will happen. The amount of refraction, okay, of the light is adjusted depending on the distance between the object and the eye. The light, okay, we said when it will enter the eye, it will bend or refract. So the amount of bending, it depends on what? It depends on the distance between the object and eye. So all of this for what? It's for getting a sharp image or for getting a clear image. So now these muscles, it will contract or it will relax depending on the distance between the object and the eye. So to get a clear image, we have a process, we call it accommodation. So accommodation, it's what? It's the ability of the lens system to produce a sharp image of objects at different distances. Again, accommodation, it's what? It's the ability of lens system to produce a sharp image of objects at different distances. Here we will see what will happen. Distant object, close object. It means here the object is far from the eye. So light needs to be refracted less. Ciliary muscles relax. Okay, eyeball becomes spherical. This is the eye. This is the eyeball. Okay, it will be spherical or it's like a ball. Ligaments are tight. Lens is pulled long and thin. So if you look at this, it's the lens. If you look at this lens, it's what? It's long and thin. So here are the changes that will happen to the eye parts when when the object is distant from eye or it's far from eye. Here it's when the object is close to the eye. What will happen? Everything here will be opposite. Here the light needs to be refracted less. Here it should be what? Greatly refracted. The ciliary muscles here will relax. Here it will contract. The eyeball becomes spherical. The eyeball inward. Okay. Ligaments are tight. Ligaments are relaxed. Lens is pulled long and thin. Lens becomes short and fat. You need here to memorize these two changes. Now, what will happen or how it will happen this process? Before we explained the size of the pupil, we said it will change depending on the light intensity. But how? Stimulus, light falls on retina, impulse in sensory neurons to optic nerve, integration in the visual center, then impulses in motor neurons. Motor neurons here, it's what? It's neurons from brain to the organs or to the effectors. Now, if the low light intensity, if the light its intensity, the light intensity is low, sorry. So what will happen? See, the pupil will increase in size. If the light intensity is high, see what will happen? It will contract. It will be smaller. Here is it's also another pictures. It shows how the size of pupil it change, but here depending on some drugs, for example, drugs and hormones, for example, adrenaline imitate this part of the reflex pupil dilate, heroin this part of reflex pupil constrict. This process, all of it, we call it pupil reflex. Okay, if you will have a question says how pupil reflects, you need to mention these steps. First, stimulus, light falls on retina, then from retina impulse in sensory neurons to optic nerve, then optic nerve will send it to the brain, then in the brain will process it and will send a response. This response will be sent to the organs through what? Through motor neurons. So what will happen? If the light intensity is low, so the pupil will increase in size. If the light intensity is high, the pupil will decrease its size, will be smaller. Dear students, that was everything for 2.50 receptors and senses. Example, the eye as a sense organ. I hope everything was clear. If you have any questions, any concerns, please don't hesitate to text me. And don't forget, when you will finish watching this video, write a comment on the video. Your task for this lesson is solving the questions. Okay, solving the questions. Thank you and have a good day.